Welcome back to Quag Keep. Continuing Chapter 7, Ambush. Milo set his foot on what the druid... Oops. Microphone not staying where it needs to be. Okay. Yeah. Milo set his foot on what the druid had dropped. That it was the other's weapon, he had no doubt at all. Milo, let go! Just in time, he caught the berserker's cry and loosed his hold. It was a kind of dark shimmer, so close that he felt the terrible chill in the air which must have been born from it. Afrita shrieked and tumbled to catch her foreclaws in Milo's cloak and cling to him. He stumbled back. Where the druid and his horse had been, there was, for one long moment, a patch of utter darkness, deeper than any lightless dungeon or a moonless night could show, then nothing. Nails splashed back across the river. Afrita, gathering herself together, flew straight for him. Milo, recovering his senses, had gone down on one knee and was examining the ground. Had the druid pulled with him into the black nothingness what he had dropped, or was it still to be found? What's to do? The berserker loomed over Milo. He dropped something here. Milo's hand darted forward at the sight of something black, dark enough in the gravel to be easily seen when he looked closely enough. Then caution intervened. He did not touch it. He knew what power of evil was caught up in this thing. The force of his foot pressure had driven it deep into the sand and fine gravel. Now he grabbed at a fragment of driftwood nearby and gingerly began to clear it. 2 sweeps of the stick were enough. It was a carving, perhaps as long as his palm it had width. The thing was wrought as a stylized representation of a creature that was not demonic as far as he could judge, and yet held in it much of menace. There was a slender body, a long neck, and a head no larger, almost the likeness of a snake, which was more mammalian than reptile. The thing's jaw gaped as wide as could Afrita's upon need, and small needle-like teeth appeared set within them. The eyes were mere dots, but the whole carving carried a suggestion of ferocity and fury. "Vergant!" Nail's voice had lost some of its grunt. "So that was what that son of 1,000 demons would bring upon us." His axe swung down, slicing the carved thing in 2 pieces. As he broke it, a puff of evil stench arose to make Milo cough. That carving had been hollow, holding within it rotting corruption. Once again the axe fell, this time flat-side, so as the 2 pieces broke into a scatter of black splinters, shifting down into the sand, lost except for a shred or 2 in the gravel. What is it? Milo got to his feet. He felt unclean since first that stench had entered his nostrils, though he drew deep breaths. He could not seem to clear his nose of its assault. One of the Carvel's toys, though he had made a complete wreckage of the carving nail now stamped hard upon the ground where it had lain, as if to hide the very last of the splinters forever. "You knew him?" "Well," growled the berserker, "when I was with the mage Wogan, we marched against the pinnacle of the Toad. That was..." He hesitated as if trying to recall something out of the past. "Some time ago. Time does not hold steady in my mind any more. This Carvel's was not of the fellowship of the Toad. In fact, he had reason to fear them, since he had poached on their territory. He came crawling to Wogan and offered his services. His services, mind you, to an adept. Like a lace fly offering to keep company with a fire wasp." Nail grinned sourly. He had not pledged himself to chaos, but he would have to save his own dirty skin. We all knew it. We also knew what he had in his mind. The toad kind had their secrets, and he wanted a chance to steal a few. Wogan ordered him out of our camp, and he went like a hound, well beaten. He dared not stand up against one so far above him in learning. We took the pinnacle. That was the tricky business. Wogan saw what lay within it destroyed, giving chaos one less stronghold in the north. What Carvels may have scrabbled out of the ruins. Anyways, this is beast magic. He summoned, or was summoning, death on 4 legs with that thing. Milo was already on the back trail. They had found that, and somehow between them, confounded the druid. But what if he had joined the 2 Yvel held? That fear sent the swordsman plunging along, no longer cautiously, but running openly. He heard the pound of Nail's feet behind him. The berserker must have been struck by the same thought. They came around a slight curve in the river to see the 2 prisoners still frozen on their mounts. Yvel leaned against a tall rock, her eyes fast upon the men. There was a bared sword, not a spell hoop, now in her hand. Milo thudded on. He needed only to note the tenseness of her body to realize that the spell must be about to fade. Breathing fast, he came up to the right of the mounted men, while Nail moved in from the left. Would Carvel suddenly also wink into view, even as he had vanished, to add to the odds? One of the frozen mounts bobbed his head and whinnied. Milo, just as he had sprung for the druid, caught at Heligret. Exerting strength, he pulled the man from his horse, dumping him to the ground, his sword out to point at the beast tamer's throat in threat. He heard a second crashing thump and knew that Nail was dealing similarly with the other. Heligret's eyes were still afire with the fury they had shown when he was ensorcelled. Now, however, his mouth writhed into a sly parody of a smile, and he made no move. Yvel came to them, her own sword ready. The other one? She asked. For the nonce gone, Milo replied shortly. Now, fellow, give me one reason why I should not spill blood at this point. Heligret's smile grew a fraction wider. Because you cannot kill without cause, swordsman, and I have yet to give you cause. You tracked us, yes, the other admitted promptly, but for no harm. Do you smell aught of the dark forces about me, or Kinshaw here? We were bound to the service of him who follows us, or did follow us. Mind bonds were laid upon us. Since mine, at least, seem to have vanished, perhaps he is tired of this play. Look at me, swordsman. My weapons are not bared. I was pressed into the service since I know somewhat of this country. Kinshaw has the other talents. Not magic, of course. That was only the learning of the druid. Milo backed a step or 2. Throw your weapon, he ordered. Throw it yonder. Heligret obeyed promptly enough, sitting up to do so, but Yvel was at his back, her steel near scratching his neck as he moved. A moment later, the weapon of Nail's captive also clattered on the gravel. In spite of the cruel strength one could read in his face, he apparently was willing enough to prove his helplessness. Why do you follow us? Milo demanded. The beast tamer shrugged. Ask no such question of me, as I told you I know something of this land. When I refused to be recruited as a guide by the Shave-Pate, he laid a journey spell on me. Already he had Kinshaw bound to him in the same manner, but he did not share with either of us the reason for our journey. We were to be used. We were no comrades of his. Plausible enough, Milo was sure. At least half a lie. The glare faded from Heligret's eyes. It was plain he was putting much effort into his attempt to establish innocence. A likely story, snorted Nail. It will likely be easy to wring the truth out of you. Not, Yavel spoke for the first time, if they are indeed gas-bound. Nail peered at her from under the edge of his heavy helm. An excuse, Battlemaid, which can cover many lies. Yet, she said, was beginning when, out of the brush behind them, arose a neighing that held in it stark and mindless terror. The two mounts of the captives shrilled in answer, wheeled and pounded in a mad stampede across the river, running wildly as the neighs from the woods rose in a terrible crescendo of sound. Hellegret's face twisted in terror, almost as great as that of the animal. "Give me my sword," he demanded, in a voice that rose like a matching shriek. "For the sake of the lords of law, give me my sword!" Nail's head swung around. He grunted loudly, and then his body itself changed. Axe fell to the ground, helm mail imprisoned, for a moment only, another form. Then, distinct in sight, a huge boar, near equaling in height the heavy horse Nail had earlier ridden, stood pawing the ground, shaking its head from side to side, the red eyes holding now nothing of the human in them, only the devouring rage and hate. Milo jumped toward the woods. From the frenzied screaming of their horses, he knew whatever menace came was a threat of death. The horses must be saved. To be set afoot in the country could mean death. He had not quite reached the line of twisted trees when the first of the attackers burst into the open. It was plainly an animal, near 8 feet long, 4-footed. Body, neck, and head were nearly of the same size. The black thing that he and Nail had destroyed was here in the flesh, far worse than even the nasty carving had suggested. The creature reared up on stumpy hind legs, its head darting back and forth as might that of a snake. The wereboar charged as the thing opened a mouth that extended near the full length of its head and showed greenish fangs. Milo caught up his shield. His patchy memory did not recognize this creature. He was dimly aware that Yvel moved in beside him, her steel as ready as his own. Their two captives had to be forgotten as a second serpent-like length of dull fur slithered out to front them. The things were quick, and whether or not they had any intelligence, it was plain that they were killing machines. As the wereboar charged, the first thing itself flung itself forward in a blur of movement, almost too quick for the eye to register, but the boar was as fast. It avoided and sprung by a quick dart to the left. One of its great tusks opened a gash along the stumpy foreleg. Then there was no watching of the duel, for the second creature leaped, leaving the ground entirely, and landed in a shower of sand and gravel, its head shooting outward toward Milo and the girl. The thud of its strike against his shield nearly cut Milo off his feet. He choked at the fetid odor. Haru! The battle cry of the women clans cut across the hissing of the creature. Milo thrust at the weaving head. He scored a cut across its neck, but only, he knew, by chance. He saw that Yvel was slashing out at its feet and legs as it spun and darted. The swordsman strove to land a second blow on the neck, but the thing moved so fast he dared not try for anything now but the bigger target of the body. Then there came a warning cry. He looked around just as a third black head pushed through the thicket to his right. "Back to back," he managed to gasp. Yvel who shouted that warning, leaped to join him. So, standing, they each faced one of the Nightmare Furies. And with that, we conclude Chapter 7, Ambush. See you all in the near future, and thank you for listening.